When I think back on the last 2 years, I realize now just how blind I was to the quiet suffering of my son. My name is Rachel, and for the longest time, I believed I was doing everything right as a mother. I had a stable home in Ohio, a steady job as a nurse, and what I thought was a strong marriage. My husband Mark and I had been together for over 15 years, and our teenage son, Ethan, was the center of our world. At least, that's how I wanted to see it. But beneath the surface, cracks were spreading, and Ethan was struggling silently in ways I didn't understand, until one decision I made changed everything. Ethan had always been a quiet boy. Unlike other kids his age, who seemed to thrive in loud social groups, Ethan preferred the quiet comfort of books, music, and drawing. He could spend hours sketching in his room, creating entire worlds out of graphite and ink. I admired his creativity, though sometimes I worried that he was too withdrawn. Mark, on the other hand, didn't understand him at all. My husband was practical, rigid, and expected Ethan to follow a path of sports, good grades, and eventually a stable career. Whenever Ethan didn't meet those expectations, Mark's disappointment would hang heavy in the air like a storm cloud. Looking back, I should have seen how damaging that was. But at the time, I was so caught up in trying to keep our marriage together that I failed to notice the toll it was taking on Ethan. My marriage to Mark had been rocky for years. We had grown apart, living more like roommates than lovers, and I found myself craving comfort and understanding elsewhere. That's where David came in, a colleague from the hospital where I worked. David was kind, empathetic, and always seemed to understand me in ways Mark never did. Our friendship started innocently enough, sharing long conversations after late shifts, but soon it grew into something deeper, something I knew crossed a line. I never intended for it to happen, but I let myself get pulled into an emotional affair. At first, I thought I was careful. I told myself Ethan didn't notice when I stayed out later than usual or when I smiled at my phone in the kitchen after getting a text from David. I thought I was doing a good job of hiding it. But children see more than we realize. Ethan wasn't blind. He just didn't know how to process what he was witnessing. My son was watching me, seeing me drift away not only from his father but also from him, and it was breaking him in ways I didn't grasp at the time. The first time I realized something was truly wrong was one night when I knocked on Ethan's door to tell him dinner was ready. Usually, even if he was moody, he'd respond with a quick okay or coming. But that night, there was only silence. I pushed open the door and found him sitting on his bed, his sketchbook lying open beside him. His eyes were red and puffy, like he had been crying. My heart sank. Ethan wasn't the type to cry easily, so seeing him like that was like a punch to the chest. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" I asked softly, sitting beside him. He shrugged, trying to act like nothing was wrong. "Nothing, Mom. I'm fine." But I knew he wasn't. Mothers have instincts, and mine screamed that my son was hurting deeply. I wanted to press him for answers, but before I could, Mark called from downstairs, his voice sharp with impatience. Ethan immediately stiffened, closing his sketchbook and turning away from me. That wall he built between himself and the world grew higher in that moment, and I felt helpless. It wasn't until weeks later that the truth came spilling out in a way I'll never forget. Ethan had been skipping meals, spending more and more time locked in his room. Teachers at school called to say he seemed distracted and withdrawn, his grades slipping from A's and B's to C's and even a D in math. I told myself it was just teenage growing pains, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. One evening, I came home earlier than expected. I opened Ethan's door quietly and found him sitting on the floor, clutching a crumpled piece of paper. His hands shook as tears rolled down his cheeks. When he saw me, he tried to hide the paper, but I gently took it from him. What I read shattered me. It was a letter, a goodbye letter. In shaky handwriting, Ethan had written about how lonely he felt, how he thought no one cared about him, how he didn't know how to carry the weight of disappointment anymore. He wrote that he felt invisible, like he could disappear and no one would notice. And then he mentioned something that tore me apart. He said he saw me with someone who wasn't Dad, and that it made him feel like our family was already broken, like he had no home to hold on to. I broke down right there on the floor, hugging my son as tightly as I could, sobbing into his shoulder. "I'm so sorry, Ethan," I whispered over and over again. "I didn't know. I should have seen you. I should have been here for you. You mean everything to me, and I can't lose you." That moment changed everything. I knew I had to make a choice, not just for myself, but for Ethan. My affair with David had to end immediately. I couldn't keep living a double life that was hurting my child. That night, I called David and told him it was over. He didn't fight me on it. He understood, though there was sadness in his voice. It hurt, but nothing mattered more than saving my son. The days that followed weren't easy. I had to face the truth with Mark, too. Our marriage had been damaged long before David came into the picture, but my choices had made the wound deeper. I confessed everything to Mark, and though his anger was explosive, there was also an undeniable truth. We had both neglected Ethan in our own ways. Mark with his harsh expectations, me with my secret escape. For the first time in years, we sat down together and really talked about what we needed to do to heal as a family. For Ethan, I sought help immediately. I found him a counselor who specialized in working with teenagers. At first, Ethan was resistant, but slowly, with gentle encouragement, he began to open up in those sessions. He shared his fears, his loneliness, and his struggle to find his place in a world that seemed too heavy for his young shoulders. The counselor helped him see that his worth wasn't defined by his grades or by our broken marriage, but by who he was as a person, a creative, kind, sensitive soul who deserved love and happiness. It took months, but little by little, Ethan began to heal. His smile returned, faint at first, but brighter with each passing week. I started spending more one-on-one time with him, going to art galleries, encouraging his sketches, even sitting beside him while he drew. I told him every single day how proud I was of him, not for his achievements, but simply for being himself. And I meant it. What I did, ending the affair, confronting the truth, and prioritizing my son, saved his life. It saved me too. Our family isn't perfect. Mark and I eventually decided to separate, realizing that while we could co-parent and remain respectful, we were no longer the right partners for each other. But we made a promise that Ethan would never again feel invisible or unloved. And today, when I see my son smiling as he shows me a new sketch or laughing with friends, I know that the choice I made that night, the choice to put him above everything else, was the most important decision of my life.